We will shortly provide that more detailed weather and flooding update for the river systems from the Lachlan, the Murrumbidgee and the Murray. We've also got with me today the local state member for Wagga Wagga, Dr Joe McGurr, and the federal member for Riverina, Michael McCormack. So we're here today to give an update to the community on what we can expect over the coming days. Whilst we are starting to see blue skies emerge, which is very pleasing, and we will see easing weather conditions over the next few days, the flooding risk is very, very high at the moment. Many of our river systems are in significant flood, particularly the Lachlan, the Murrumbidgee and the Murray. So in relation to Forbes, we are anticipating record floods to move through that community. There are evacuation orders in place impacting 500 to 600 people and their evacuation order is to take effect by 4 p.m. today. We also have evacuation orders in place for the entire suburb of North Wagga and we are encouraging people, residents in both of those communities, please don't leave it to the last minute to evacuate. We do put those timelines on the evacuation, but we would like you to move sooner rather than later. Such is the risk that we believe is presented to your community at the moment. So as I've indicated, the main areas of concern are definitely Forbes. We also saw overnight an evacuation order for Gunnedah, of course. That community's experienced 7 or 8 floods now in the last few months. Down here in Wagga, this is the fourth peak to come through since August. I appreciate that communities right across the central and southern New South Wales are exhausted. Everyone is flood weary, but we need to keep working through this. We need to keep working together. And I'm asking everyone in every community to please be aware of the risks as they present themselves to you in your community. We want you and your family to stay safe at this time. Also encouraging people once again, or asking people, imploring people, please do not drive through floodwaters. We continue to respond to flood rescues night and day at present, and that's disappointing in a lot of ways because we've been putting this messaging out now for months. Our rivers tend to rise very quickly because the ground is saturated and we are continuing to see peaks roll through the system even though there isn't water falling from the sky at the moment. I think on that note, I might just give a brief update in relation to the clean-up efforts in Cootamundra, which was badly impacted by thunderstorms and flash flooding on Monday. The SES, supported by Fire Rescue New South Wales and other emergency services organisations, have now completed the vast majority of rapid damage assessments in that community. We've had 37 properties identified as being damaged and 23 of those are not habitable. I had the opportunity to tour the town yesterday with Mayor Charlie Sheehan, having a look at the damage to people's homes, meeting with those residents and also inspecting the damage done to council and local infrastructure. So we will continue working with the federal government in relation to support measures for both councils, for primary producers, of course, who have continued to be impacted by this latest event, not to mention the events that have occurred earlier in this year. And we will continue to work together to provide that very, very necessary support. On that note, I'll hand over to Ben Pickup for the operational update. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We've got some very significant flooding occurring on all our major river systems at present. Starting up at the Lachlan, we've seen major flooding occur at Nanamai, which is currently expected to peak this afternoon around 13.5 metres. That is a significant flood for that area and leaves the community of Goolagong isolated, and resupply will be required into that area. We're also going to see that predicted record flooding at Forbes. So the Lachlan River at Forbes is expected to reach 10.55 early this afternoon and then reach a peak level of 10.8 metres on overnight Friday, early Saturday morning. Really encourage the community of Forbes please listen to the warning information that's going out. We've issued a number of evacuation orders for that community. Please follow that messaging. This is a significant flood for that community. While they're a very resilient community, just encourage, please evacuate early. Do not leave it to the last minute. We continue then to see major flooding occur down the remainder of the Lachlan catchment area, where we've currently got major flooding at Condobolin, and going to continue to see that major flooding occur for weeks yet as that peak continues to move downstream. On the Murrumbidgee River, last night we saw the peak occur at Gundagai, and that flood peak is now approaching Wagga. The BOM has just revised the forecast for the predicted height at Wagga, so likely to see a peak of 9.8 metres tomorrow afternoon. With the evacuation orders that we do have in place for that community, again, I encourage, please do not delay evacuation. Leave early. It is the safest option. With that, once the river passes 9.6, we will lose access to the North Wagga community inside the levee, and we need people to be out before that occurs. At 9.8, we would not see the North Wagga levee around the township itself over top, but we don't want people in that community once we lose access to it. So please encourage early evacuation. Downstream from Wagga, we continue to see moderate to major flooding all the way down through to Balranald. And these peaks are likely to get higher as we see the higher peak at Wagga progressively move downstream. On the Murray River, in the Albury and Cora area, we've seen renewed moderate flooding from the widespread rainfall we've experienced over the last few days. And downstream to Moama, we have that existing major flooding, which is equivalent to the 1993 flood level down there, which is a significant flood for those communities. And that level will continue downstream to the smaller communities all along the Murray River until the South Australian border. We've got in the field today, we have crews working from every single agency in New South Wales out there supporting the SES and their local communities. This is a truly multi-agency response and call to action with the communities. We've also had significant support from those communities in undertaking preparation, including sandbags, spontaneous volunteers, and we really want to thank the community for their efforts in that and that of our partner agencies. While we're seeing those sunny skies return for a few days, we continue to see that flooding occur. Blue sky flooding is just as dangerous as when the rain is falling and we have that flash flooding. So my message to the community, to the members, is please do not walk, ride or drive through floodwater. It is dangerous. It puts yourself, your family and the rescuers who come to provide assistance from the emergency service agencies at risk. Throughout these floods, we do not want to lose any lives. We want the community to be safe. While the emergency services are there and they will support the communities, please do not put your life at risk. Follow the warning information and encourage early evacuation. We currently have 74 warnings across Southern Zone active, including 19 emergency warnings, and they're all for evacuations across the communities of Forbes and Wagga. We'll continue to undertake this response. This is not a short-term flood. Particularly in those communities of Wagga and Forbes, we're likely to see isolation of main areas for 4 to 5 days and very slow moving flood peaks. We've now seen, as the Minister mentioned, a number of floods over the last couple of months, particularly on the Lachlan and the Murrumbidgee rivers. So there's floodwater, multiple layers of floodwater. So where we might see rivers recede quicker at times, we're now going to see very slow falling peaks. What we're currently experiencing down at Moama, where it still remains above the major flood level. If you do need assistance from the SES, please call 132 500 and dial 000 in emergencies. And please encourage the community, leave early, do not delay evacuations. And the emergency service agencies will be working as one throughout this entire flood event to support their communities. And thank you very much for the community to listening to the call to action and undertaking their preparations.
It's just important to heed the warnings that the SES are giving, that police are giving, that even local councils are giving. They want everybody to stay safe. We've just heard from Minister Cook, we've heard from Ben Pickup, and I know Dr McGurr would echo those sentiments. Please stay safe. Take those evacuation orders now. Pack up your goods. You can always replace goods. You cannot replace lives. It's quite simple. If it's flooded, forget it. Don't drive through those flooded roadways, even if you know the road. There are so many potholes about. It could jeopardise your life. It could jeopardise, indeed, a person sent to save you. So I can't emphasise that enough. Just please take care, take every precaution, but heed that advice. If you're in one of those evacuation areas, pack up and leave now.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate the messages this morning. First of all, I realise that there are many farmers and many communities in this area, particularly in my electorate, that have already been affected, that are isolated or have had to evacuate. But now we know that the level is predicted at 9.8 for Wagga. That will, I know, cause a lot of anxiety to the residents of North Wagga. Message is, please, you have time to evacuate. The order is to evacuate. Please evacuate. You are experienced. This is one of repeated flood peaks we've had this year. Over the years, a lot of experience. People know what to do. Now is the time to leave, evacuate your properties. I think that's very important. As has been said, the peak will be with us for longer, so I expect that isolation will go for longer as well. But the agencies are acting together. They are on the ground. They are providing support. I thank Zone Commander Pickup. He briefed the Wagga community, North Wagga community last night. They are calm. They know what to do. And I just encourage you to please comply with those orders and evacuate. You've got time now. Please go ahead and of course, don't drive through the floodwaters, as has been said multiple times. Thank you.
Other questions? So at 9.8 metres, that's coming right up on the North Wagga flood levy. How concerned are you about that community being inundated?
Well, there's no doubt that we've seen that flood height revised a number of times this week, and 9.8 is worrying. There's no question of that. That's why we stand here today. That's why we're working very closely with the community. We've had those community meetings last night. We're asking people, of course, in that community to continue working with us. They are used to floods, there's no doubt about that, but nonetheless, every flood is different. We have seen flood upon flood come through the Murrumbidgee over the past 2 months in particular, and we need to treat each flood very seriously, and that's why we're standing here today.
There are a number of people who have chosen not to evacuate despite the order. What's your message to them?
I would encourage everyone to evacuate. If you've been asked to evacuate, there's a reason why we're asking you. It's because we want you to be safe, we want your family, your pets, we want you to be safe at the end of the day. And I would encourage you, please, to work with us, particularly now that we've had this very, very recent revision up to 9.8. We would like you to work with us and evacuate.
Minister, earlier this week you said you were discussing further federal aid for communities impacted particularly by that flash flooding we saw earlier in the week. Is there any update on that? Have we heard if that's likely to come through?
There are ongoing discussions between the New South Wales and the federal government. We will continue to have those negotiations and those discussions. We are determined, both the federal government and the New South Wales government, to help each and every community get through these flooding events, and we will have more to say on that in the future.
Are you only talking about funding for those communities that were impacted by the flash flooding, such as Cootamundra, or will that be across the board for communities like North Wagga and Forbes now?
So all of these council areas that you've mentioned are all covered already under the Natural Disaster Declaration. This event has been rolling constantly since the 14th of September. So we are many, many weeks into this event. And every week there are more and new council areas that are impacted, and they too are added to the Natural Disaster Declaration list. So when we undertake negotiations with the federal government, it is with a view to supporting all of the local government areas that have been impacted by the particular event that we are discussing.
Is there enough support available at the moment for those communities?
There is certainly support available. Category A and Category B support does provide support for households, for individuals, particularly those who have experienced inundation. There's also support for councils to restore their public infrastructure, whether that's the road network or whether that's things like water and sewerage. They are elements that are covered. There are support for farmers, particularly things like transport subsidies, which are really, really important if you need to move stock from one location where they might find themselves stranded to higher ground. So those supports are already in place, and we will continue to do everything we can to unlock further support.
Ben, can I just ask you a few questions about what's happening in North Wagga? Do you know how many people have already evacuated?
The majority of the community at North Wagga has taken the advice and evacuated. There's a number going back in today to finalise their preparations, and then they will continue to leave. There is an evacuation centre open to support the residents that have evacuated and will be evacuating up at Kiama Smith Hall, which is on Burke Street at the Wagga Showgrounds. So just encourage the residents, if they need support, they need assistance with accommodation, somewhere to go that's safe, we have that evacuation centre open with our partner agencies to provide support for that community.
Are many people evacuating to that centre?
We've had a number of presentations over today, and we expect that number will increase as the afternoon goes on.
Do you have a precise number of how many people are under evacuation orders in Wagga at the moment?
In Wagga, it's around 750 people.
And across the state?
It's about 700 as well in Forbes. And those are the two locations in our zones where we have those evacuation orders in place.
Yesterday afternoon, the evacuation order was declared for 7 o'clock this morning, and then later in the evening it was extended till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Is there a chance that could be revised to an earlier time for the residents of Wagga?
We continue to work with the BOM on the best timings and heights they provide. We don't take it lightly when we issue an evacuation time. We do this with the best interests of the community to ensure they're able to have time to prepare and time to get out before they're in harm's way. So we'll continue to review the timings as needed and ensure the community has that messaging and is able to make safe decisions.
Can you just provide an update on the conditions in Gundagai?
Gundagai. So Gundagai last night, there's quite a significant peak for Gundagai. It does impact the low-lying roads and bridges in that community, as well as the caravan park, which had been evacuated from previous flood events already. It will take some time for that flood peak to move down, and there is a number of rural isolations in that area just because of the significant volume of water. The community has fared well through this flood, but it does cause impact to the community, and also that LGA and those rural roads. So we'll continue to provide support as we start that transition to recovery for the Gundagai community.
Perfect. And I do apologise if I pronounced this incorrectly. Ungary, what's the situation there?
So at Ungary, we've seen some of the high creek and river levels impact that area. At this stage, there's been no overflow inundation. However, we do have water in parts of the town from those creeks.
And is that still increasing the water height, or is it now receding?
At present it is stable, but we'll continue to monitor the conditions and the river heights in conjunction with the Bureau of Meteorology.
Yep. And do you know what roads are closed in that town?
I don't have that information right with me.
No,
Sorry.
that's fine. And
Can I just ask just your paper there? Just near the microphone, that's very sensitive. Sorry.
and just quickly as well, do you know when around what time the roads will be coloured to North Wagga?
At this stage, the prediction is early tomorrow morning that we'll lose that access. However, as the conditions are very dynamic across the flood impact zones, we encourage the community, do not delay, do not wait for that time, evacuate early.
We saw pictures come out of Gundagai yesterday of a couple of flood rescues. Do we have a statistic on how many flood rescues have been executed in the past 24 hours throughout the Southern Zone?
And Southern Zone, we've seen 5 flood rescues in the last 24 hours. Given the amount of water that we see around the communities, that number is very, very pleasing. We'd prefer it be 0, but the community is heeding the message and encourage them to do so. We've seen 74 flood rescues just in the last few weeks, so really encourage people to continue to heed that messaging, follow the advice and make those safe decisions not to enter floodwater.
Ben, with that peak revised to 9.8 metres, that's coming up really close to the North Wagga levee. At what point would that levee be breached?
So at the moment the crest height for that levee is 9.9, and there is at places it's higher for safety reasons as well. So with the 9.8, it's unlikely that levee will be overtopped, but we'll continue to monitor conditions with the local government and emergency service agencies.
We have seen those peaks pushed up a number of times, particularly up at Gundagai, about 2 or 3 times the peak was increased. Are there concerns that's going to happen here?
We'll continue working with the Bureau of Meteorology just to ensure that we get the latest information, latest river heights, and if there's any changes, we'll keep the community informed.
Should the community be more concerned about inundation than they were yesterday?
Yeah. I just encourage the community to continue to prepare, continue to follow that evacuation advice, and the emergency service agencies and local government and the New South Wales government will continue to be there to provide support.
Do you know roughly how many of the residents are opting to stay in North Wagga?
At this stage, we've had the majority of residents indicate they will evacuate, and we expect that number to increase as the flood peak arrives. The community had a good take-up last night at the community meeting. They are experienced, they know no floods, they know the impact in their community, and we'll continue to work with them to ensure their safety. Really want to thank those communities. They are listening, they are engaging with us. It is a partnership with emergency service agencies. We work with them and they work with us, and we'll continue to provide support throughout this flood event.
Just had one more question, sorry, Ben. We're in a regional area, of course. With the flood operations you've undertaken to help people evacuate, how much of that has involved livestock and animals, and how does that impact the SES's operations?
Yeah. So across Southern Zone, we've seen significant impacts with the rural communities, including sheep, camels down at Moama, and cattle. We work with local land services and DPI to ensure that we provide support, whether that's fodder drops for isolated livestock or evacuations where it's possible by boat, and we'll continue to do so. We've spent a number of horse rescues down at Wagga. Flooding, it's not just about people, it's not just about properties, it is about the animals as well. We have that whole of government approach in New South Wales. All the agencies come together and they provide support in that area. Throughout Southern Zone and the wider New South Wales, we have all these agencies embedded in our incident management teams, in our local emergency operations centres. We have personnel from all across our agencies as well as interstate. We currently have Western Australian DFES staff here assisting us, along with South Australian and Tasmanians a couple of weeks ago. So it's truly a whole of government approach and a whole of nation approach to provide support, regardless if it's people, property or animals. We're here to support all those.
Can you tell me about what SES are doing on the ground in North Wagga and other suburbs to prepare for the flood peak?
So as we prepare for flood peaks, one of the key tasks we undertake is sandbagging operations, so where we work with the communities, those spontaneous volunteers and the emergency service agencies and members to sandbag. We encourage people in impact areas to sandbag their doorways, block the drains with sandbags, and then we're also undertaking those door knocking operations just to make sure the community has the information, they have a chance to ask questions, and we can provide assistance options if they need support to evacuate.
And do you know how slow or fast the river is moving from Gundagai to
So at present, the river is still moving in its, its usual timeframes with the main flood peak, which is usually 40 to 48 hours from Gundagai. What we're seeing with the peaks coming into the river currently is that runoff from the local creeks and tributaries, including the Talcutta, as a result of the widespread rainfall we had the other night. That was quite significant rainfall in this area, so that's why we've seen a bit of rapid rise yesterday and the earlier rise, and we'll continue to see that main peak move down from Gundagai, likely to arrive at Wagga tomorrow afternoon.
Ben, do you know at what river height the village of Ara will be cut off from Wagga, and is that expected at some point today?
Yeah, so Ara will be cut off from Wagga today. They'll continue to have access to Junee, and our Junee SES unit and the local Ara RFS brigade will continue to provide support to that community. Yeah.
Is there any water expected through the village, or just cutting off that main road into Wagga?
No inundation of that village is expected at that river height. There will be some water in backyards and towards the lower end of those properties. However, it's not expected to be any inundation. However, we'll continue to monitor conditions and work with the locals and those agencies to support them should the conditions change.
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That's good. Thanks for last night. It was good. Thank you.